If you were standing in a typical American grocery store in 1962, the air didn't just smell like floor wax and fresh produce. It smelled like underlying dread. While the federal government was busy printing duck and cover posters and filming instructional videos about hiding under wooden desks, serious survivalists and pragmatic heads of households were looking at the shelves with a much more critical eye. They knew that if the sirens actually wailed, a thin layer of plywood wouldn't save them, but what they had tucked away in their pantries just might. This wasn't about the mass-produced, bland survival crackers the Civil Defence Office was stockpiling in public shelters. This was about personal sovereignty in the face of total annihilation. We are going to dive deep into the specific, calorie-dense and often overlooked staples that kept the most prepared citizens ready for a world that might end tomorrow. Before we break down these historical logistics, make sure to subscribe to Atten Recounts and share this video with your fellow history buffs so we can keep uncovering these forgotten chapters of survival history. The civilian reliance on high-fat preservation went far beyond standard government recommendations. The official government literature of the 1950s and 60s often leaned heavily on grains and water, but the seasoned Cold War survivalist understood that caloric density was the only metric that truly mattered in a high-stress, low-resource environment. While the government was busy stockpiling those essentially flavourless wheat crackers, private citizens were focusing on canned fats. Lard, tallow and heavy oils were the true gold of the panic pantry because these items served a dual purpose that the official manuals often glossed over. They provided the necessary lipids for brain function during extreme trauma and acted as a superior preservative for other scavenged goods. A common tactic among serious enthusiasts was the practice of confitting or completely submerging cooked meats in a thick layer of rendered fat within ceramic crocks. This effectively sealed the protein from oxygen, allowing it to remain edible for months without refrigeration. Today, a survivalist can apply this by learning the process of rendering tallow from beef fat. By slowly heating raw fat and straining it into sterilized jars, you create a shelf-stable cooking medium and calorie source that outlasts almost any processed vegetable oil found on modern shelves. Dried legumes and whole grains formed the backbone of long-term metabolic stability. Government pamphlets frequently mentioned emergency rations, but they rarely discussed the long-term nutritional exhaustion that occurs after the first 2 weeks of a crisis. Serious historians note that the most successful private stockpiles focused on hard grains like red winter wheat and bulk legumes such as chickpeas and lentils, chosen not just for their shelf life, but for their ability to be sprouted. In a fallout scenario where fresh greens are, basically non-existent, a handful of dried lentils can be placed in a jar with a bit of water to produce sprouts within days, providing a critical source of vitamin C and enzymes that prevent scurvy, a detail the government's biscuit-heavy diet completely ignored. To replicate this, one should not just store bags of beans, but also invest in wide-mouth glass jars and mesh sprouting lids. Practicing the rotation of these crops ensures you know exactly how many days of soaking and rinsing are required to turn a dormant seed into a living, nutrient-dense vegetable, effectively turning your pantry into a self-sustaining indoor garden. The strategic importance of salt and sugar as both currency and chemical preservatives. While the general public was, told to keep a few extra cans of soup, the deeper pantry secrets involved the massive accumulation of salt and refined sugar, viewed not as seasonings but as vital chemical tools. Salt was the primary method for curing any meat that might be hunted or salvaged in a post-collapse environment where the power grid was gone, while sugar was recognized as a high-energy fuel and a powerful preservative for wild foraged fruits. Historians often overlook that in a prolonged crisis, these items transition from kitchen staples to a form of hard currency. If you look at historical accounts of civilian survival in war-torn regions, a bag of salt often brought more security than a handful of jewellery. A practical application for the modern enthusiast is the dry salting method, where you pack fresh vegetables like cabbage or carrots into a crock with a specific weight ratio of salt to trigger lactic acid fermentation. This not only preserves the food for a year or more, but also creates probiotics that support the immune system. A vital asset when medical facilities are no longer an option. Canned evaporated milk was the overlooked tactical liquid for sustained health. The government's primary focus was on water storage, which is undeniably essential, but they often failed to address the rapid calcium and protein depletion that occurs in children and the elderly during food shortages. The secret weapon of the 1960s pantry was evaporated milk, because, unlike fresh milk, it was concentrated, shelf-stable for years, and contained a high concentration of minerals, making it an excellent base for high-protein gruels, and honestly, a crucial morale booster. In a survival context, morale is a physiological requirement. The ability to produce a creamy, warm meal in a cold basement shelter could be the difference between psychological collapse and the will to persevere. To utilize this knowledge today, look for canned milks with the longest expiration dates and practice FIFO or first-in, first-out rotation. You can integrate this into your current meal planning by using evaporated milk in place of fresh cream in recipes, ensuring your stock remains fresh while you build a deep reserve that, requires no electricity to maintain. Specialized honey and vinegar stocks served as, the primary medical toolkit. In the height of the Cold War, those who didn't trust the government's ability to maintain a medical supply chain turned to the so-called Apothecary Pantry. Raw, unfiltered honey was a staple not just for its indefinite shelf life, but for its antibacterial properties. When bandages were scarce, honey was used topically on wounds to prevent infection, a practice used since antiquity but revived by Cold War survivalists. Similarly, apple cider vinegar, with the mother intact, was stored in bulk to be used as a digestive aid, a water purifier in mild concentrations, and a pickling agent for scavenged greens. If you want to apply this historically informed survival tactic, start by sourcing local raw honey and storing it in glass containers away from direct sunlight, knowing that even if it crystallizes over decades, it can be gently reheated and returned to its liquid state without losing its medicinal or caloric value. Keeping 5 gallons of vinegar on hand allows you to preserve almost any vegetable you encounter, ensuring that your pantry remains, a dynamic, evolving resource rather than just a static pile of cans. Thank you for exploring these forgotten survival strategies with me. If you found this deep dive into the logistics of the past valuable, please subscribe to Atten Recounts and share this video with others who appreciate the gritty, real-world details of history. Together we can ensure these lessons stay as evergreen as the supplies they describe.